UFC Fight Night, Garry versus Prates. We have a pretty solid card this weekend taking place in Kansas City, Missouri. Let's talk about it. First, we have Chelsea Chandler taking on Joselyne Edwards. Bit of an experience gap here. Joselyne Edwards has 20 pro fights to Chelsea Chandler's 9. Both are kind of hovering around 500 in the UFC, although Joselyne Edwards has like 9 or so fights, and I think Chelsea Chandler only has 4. I think Edwards is the better athlete and the better grappler, which I think is going to be the big difference here. I think she's going to be able to land takedowns on Chelsea Chandler and hold her down and win a decision. Next up is Timmy Cuamba taking on Roberto Romero. Really close fight here. Romero lost his debut to David Onama in November. No one expected him to win that fight. He was a huge underdog. I think he was a short notice replacement in that fight as well, and David Onama is a serious contender who we're going to touch on a little bit later. He pretty much got mauled in that fight. Onama landed a lot of hard shots, but definitely showed some grit, but didn't really get a chance to show up much offense. Timmy Cuamba, on the other hand, is also looking for his first UFC win. Got beat up pretty bad by Lucas Almeida in his last fight, but he finished the fight on top. I feel like he kind of showed his gas tank there and sort of his grit as well to, finish pretty strong to fight despite being down pretty much the entire fight. These guys do have a common opponent, Ivan Tana. Don't know much about him, but he did beat Cuamba and he did lose to Roberto Romero, but we're not going to really look at MMA math too much. Both these guys are young fighters, 25, 26 years old. I think Cuamba has the slightly better wrestling here, as shown kind of how he was able to take down Almeida in his last fight. I think he can win a decision here and, win this one on the cards using his wrestling, just because I think the striking is pretty much a wash between these two, so that's really the only visible edge one has over the other I could see. Next up is Jaqueline Amorim taking on Polyana Viana. Amorim, I think she just pretty much handled business here. She's gotten 3 finishes in her last 3 fights. Wasn't against, the highest level opponents, but Polyana Viana is not the highest level opponent either. She is 4-6 in the UFC, and especially as of late, has lost more than she's won. She's got pretty bad takedown defense, which I think is going to play into Amorim's hands, and she really might just get completely outclassed on the ground. I think Amorim finds a submission in this one. Next up is a bantamweight matchup between Malcolm Wellmaker and Cameron Saaiman. Saaiman has lost 2 straight, one to Christian Rodriguez and another to Peyton Talbot. 2 guys who are a lot bigger than him and who you could kind of tell were just able to kind of impose their will physically on him. He's got a pretty good game. He's solid striking. But like in those fights, especially the Peyton Talbot, he didn't really get a chance to land a whole lot, and you could just tell that the shots he was landing did not have the same effect as Talbot's. So I definitely think size could be an issue, and Malcolm Wellmaker is going to be a lot bigger here. He's going to have a few inches on him, as well as a bit of reach here. He's a super powerful guy. He got a round 1 KO on the Contender Series. Definitely showed some weaknesses. It feels like he doesn't really protect himself too much. He kind of just fades away and kind of leaves his hands down. So he got hit a few times in that fight. But really the first shot he landed put his opponent out cold. So the guy definitely has serious power. He's a bit older, a bit bigger. I think Wellmaker is going to find a KO on Cameron Saaiman. He's just going to have a lot more power, and that's going to be the difference maker here. Next up is another bantamweight matchup between Damon Blackshear and Alatengheili. Blackshear got KO'd pretty bad versus Montel Jackson last year, but then he rebounded with back-to-back submission wins over Cody Gibson and Cody Stamen, who are both very strong grapplers. I think better grapplers than Alatengheili, who I just don't really see being much of a threat to Blackshear anywhere here. I mean, Alatengheili's path to victory, I think, is get Blackshear down and control him for 15 minutes, and I just don't think he has the wrestling to do that. He seems decent in grappling, but, Blackshear is just so dangerous on the ground that I think that's going to dissuade Alatengheili from really selling out for these takedowns. And I think on the feet, Blackshear is better as well. So we're taking Blackshear to win this one. I think he finds a submission. He's going to keep that streak alive versus Alatengheili here. Next up is Chris Gutierrez taking on John Castaneda. Both guys here are moving to 145 up from bantamweight. Gutierrez is a guy who was super hot at one point. He was on a 7-fight win streak with, I think, 1 draw sprinkled in there. But in his last few fights, he's got losses to Song Yadong and Pedro Munoz. 2 very solid fighters. Song Yadong, who I think is the real deal, and Pedro Munoz, who's super tough as well, good striking. Gutierrez has really good leg kicks. I think kind of a common trend in that gym. But his boxing is not that great. He's really going to kind of just spam leg kicks. And he's a hard guy to get a hold of and to track down. And he's able to win a lot of fights like that. I mean, both of his like KO finishes are from like spinning back fists or like crazy knees. So he's not really piecing people up with his hands too much. Castaneda, I think, is going to have the better boxing in this one. He's coming off a loss to Daniel Marcos, who's a really solid fighter in the division. But I think he's got better boxing than Gutierrez. And Gutierrez, I think, is just going to be kind of on the back foot, spamming leg kicks. And I think Castaneda, if he can track him down, could land the harder shots here. We're taking Castaneda by decision. Next up is Evan Elder taking on Gage Young. 2 guys who I believe trained together back in the day. Gage Young is a somewhat short replacement here. He lost his Dana White Contender Series fight versus Quillen Salkild. Pretty tough fight. I mean, I thought he fought him pretty close. Scrappy dude. Lot of grit. And you can kind of say the same things about Evan Elder on the other hand. He's another guy who's, just finds himself in dog fights. I expect this one to turn into a bit of a slugfest, and I think someone's going to get KO'd here. Evan Elder is older. He's 28 to Gage Young's 24. I think he's been training for a bit longer, and his wrestling's quite a bit better. So I could definitely see him landing some takedowns, but I think we're definitely in for a lot of back and forth on the feet. Someone's going to get hurt. I think Elder finds a KO in this fight. Next up is Matt Schnell taking on Jimmy Flickt in the flyweight division. Schnell is unretiring after he announced his retirement last year. He had gotten finished 3 times in a row at that point. And you got to worry about his mindset right now. I mean, he was getting finished by tough dudes like, Steven Erceg. Obviously, he had that crazy fight versus Sumaderji where they both just took so much damage, and he just ended up getting like the submission win at the end there. But I worry about his mindset. Why did he retire in the first place, and why is he unretiring now? Like, is he going to be 100% committed here? Jimmy Flickt, on the other hand, I think we kind of know what to expect from him. He's going to have solid grappling. He's got a lot of submission wins under his belt. We've seen Schnell get tapped out a few times here. I think he gets submitted versus Jimmy Flickt in this fight. Next up is Ikram Aliskerov taking on Andre Muniz. Ikram definitely got humbled by Robert Whitaker last year in Saudi Arabia. Took about 10 months off, and now he's back for this card. And I think this is a really solid matchup for him. Andre Muniz is not the best striker, where I think Ikram is going to run into trouble against kind of the higher level guys at middleweight, because I don't think his striking is really on par with those guys. Muniz is really going to pose a grappling threat, and that's about it, and I just do not see Aliskerov getting submitted. He comes from, that Russian Sambo style. He's got really good wrestling, and I don't really see him getting submitted off, when he's in top position. I think he's going to take down Andre Muniz, bully him, and eventually find a ground and pound KO in this fight. Next up is Randy Brown taking on Nicolas Dalby. Dalby is a guy who He defeated one of the Bone Femmes, a couple years ago, and then he's kind of had some ups and downs since then. He's a solid fighter. He's not the most dangerous guy. He's kind of just a bulldog who's going to try and beat you with, output, bully you up against the cage, land shots in close. He's not going to knock you out. He's not really going to submit you either. Randy Brown is coming off of a loss to Brian Battle, a fight that I thought he probably should have won. We picked Brian Battle in that fight, but I thought Randy Brown landed more cleaner strikes in that matchup. He's the longer guy compared to Nicolas Dalby by a long shot, and I think he's got a much better striking. And I just don't really see Dalby posing much of a threat here. I think Brown's going to be able to get his strikes off, be able to maintain that distance, and win this one on the cards. Michel Pereira takes on Abus Magomedov next. Pereira had his main event versus Alexander Hernandez in October. He got mauled in that fight. I mean, after about the first or second round, it just wasn't really even competitive at that point. He couldn't keep up with the pace of Hernandez and the grappling. It was just too much. He kind of just got overwhelmed. But before that, he had 3 finishes at middleweight and was looking pretty good. I definitely think middleweight is where he belongs. He never really seemed like much of a welterweight. Second on Abus Magomedov, who's got back-to-back wins here. Abus, I still really don't know what to make of this guy. It seems like he's really solid. He'll give you like a really tough 2 rounds, and then I wouldn't really expect much from him. He seems to fade a lot. But he's definitely dangerous. Obviously, he had the crazy, front kick knockout over Stoltzfus in his UFC debut. And he had that submission win over Bruno Ferreira. So he's definitely dangerous. But you kind of just don't really know what kind of guy you're going to get from him. I think Michel Pereira is just the more consistent fighter here. I think he's going to have better stamina, better striking. And as long as he doesn't get taken down, I think he's going to land a lot more on the feet. We're taking Pereira by decision in that fight. Next is Giga Chikadze taking on David Onama. Giga was a guy who was starting to gain a bit of steam in the featherweight division, but then he pretty much got dominated in that Calvin Kattar fight, beat up pretty bad over 5 rounds. But he had a fight versus Alex Caceres last year that he looked pretty good in, and then he took on Arnold Allen, a fight that he lost, but I liked what I saw from him in that matchup as well. He got his kicks off, landed a few clean ones. I thought his boxing looked a bit improved as well, which was a part of his game that was lacking a bit. And cardio is definitely the issue with Giga Chikadze. I thought that he had improved upon it a bit as of late. Like, he's not really a 5-round guy. I think he's best suited in these 3-rounders. But he's got a really tough matchup here versus David Onama, who's really impressed. He's got a win over Gabriel Santos. That's aged really well. That guy's on fire right now. He's got a lot of power, good hands. Took on, Roberto Romero. Short notice. Obviously, he was coming off a full training camp, fully expected to win, and he pretty much handled business there. I would have liked to see him get a finish, but he landed a lot of hard shots there. And it feels like Giga's best chance here is landing a hard body kick, finding the liver of David Onama, and it's kind of just hard to rely on that. I think Onama's got the faster hands, more dangerous on the feet. I think Onama lands a KO here. We're going to say late in the fight. We're going to call it a round 3 KO when Giga's lost a bit of his step, and Onama's going to have a big speed advantage at that point. Our co-main event is Anthony Smith taking on Zhang Mingyang. I'm starting to realize that all of my Anthony Smith analysis with each of his fights is pretty much the same. He's always coming up against someone bigger, stronger, more explosive than him. That's just kind of to be expected at this point. And I'm never really anticipating him to win. The only thing you can kind of depend on is for him to just steal one of these fights every so often. You just don't know which one it is. But he's just bound to, get his wrestling off, land a sneaky submission like he did a few fights back when he took on Vitor Petrino. He's just due for one of these crazy wins out of nowhere. The question is, when is that really going to come? He's taking on Zhang Mingyang, who has pretty limited experience against decent light heavyweights. Like, it's safe to say Anthony Smith is the most accomplished opponent he's ever fought, I'd say by a long shot. He even has a loss to, like, the Ukrainian con man, Mazharov, the guy who was faking his record. Although I think that was back when Mingyang was, like, 18, 19 years old. And, yeah, Mingyang, I mean, he's going to be way bigger. And if he lands anything clean on Anthony Smith, I think that's pretty much going to be wraps. So we're still picking Zhang Mingyang to win this one by KO. But this will be a really good test for him. Our main event, though, is Ian Machado Garry taking on Carlos Prates. Super interesting fight at welterweight in what I think is shaping up to be in maybe the most interesting division in the UFC, if you ask me. So many cool prospects. You have these two. You got Buckley, Shavkat. Obviously, Bilal's got the belt right now, but it feels like he's still got his fair amount of doubters. It's not like he's definitely not in full control of the division. JDM fighting him for the belt. Just a lot of moving pieces, a lot of up-and-comers. And I'm really interested to see what is going to come of this division in the coming months. This fight has a lot of implications here because you had Ian Garry, who was pretty much in that title eliminator bout versus Rakhmonov. And he, of course, has garnered quite a bit of attention in the welterweight division. Both in his from his fights and out of the octagon antics and what have you. So I don't feel like this is a title eliminator, but definitely big ranking implications here. Obviously, Prates is the lower ranked guy here, but if he gets a win, I think that starts putting him in that sort of title eliminator conversation, just given all the finishes he's had. Let's talk about Prates. His striking is pretty remarkable. He's 4-0 in the UFC, hasn't had really the strongest competition, of course, and the most resistance he really had up to this point was from Trevin Giles, who landed a lot of clean shots in that fight. Looked really good through the first couple of rounds there. Prates, at sometimes, you kind of saw him freeze a bit when he got caught, and he just took a lot of shots in that fight. But really, once he kind of got his mojo, he landed one hard, left cross counter on Trevin Giles, and it was over. So Prates just has that power that I don't think Ian Garry has faced up to this point in his UFC career or otherwise. Obviously, he faced Jeff Neal, and you kind of saw that hesitance from Ian Garry when he comes up against a power puncher. He doesn't really commit to his shots as much as he would versus some of his other opponents. And I could see, just the power of Prates giving Ian Garry a lot of pause here. Ian Garry, on the other hand, he's the more well-rounded guy here. He can kind of fall back on the grappling if he needs to, and we've yet to see Carlos Prates really get tested in the grappling as of late, so I expect to see Ian Garry mixing things up a lot here. I think Garry kind of marketed himself as some crazy striker, and he definitely has the skills, but we're going to see, I think, a big power imbalance here, especially in the hands. Prates just hits way harder. We've never really seen Ian Garry have that, one-shot put-you-out power that we've seen from Carlos Prates. And Ian Garry had that fight versus Shavkat that, he definitely lost, but there's some good things he took away from there. He defended the takedowns very well, which won't be too relevant here. But he ate some really clean shots from Shavkat, so he definitely showed off the chin. Really tough matchup to pick here. I think Ian Garry's the popular pick because he's more well-rounded and people have their doubts about Prates. I really like the power of Prates, and I think we're going to see Garry hesitate a lot. When he came up against a superior striker in MVP, we saw him pretty much get completely neutralized on the feet, and he had to resort to grappling as kind of his only option, because if he kept that fight on the feet, I thought he would have lost pretty handedly. He was giving up a lot of speed. Prates is a different kind of striker to MVP. He's sitting down more on his shots. He's looking to put you out, and I don't think he's quite as fast as MVP. But Ian Garry, I don't think has ever been hit by anyone as hard as Prates, and I think we're going to see Prates land something devastating here and put Ian Garry out. And that is the pick. So Prates KO in this main event here. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.